Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate, and welcome back to another weather forecast discussion, this time from March 21st, 2023. Now, something interesting that I wanted to get into before we get into the main nitty-gritty of our forecasts for later on in the week. Something interesting happened here in California today. We had a very well-defined surface low-pressure system that moved off towards the Bay Area, and it actually created two individual mini low-pressure systems that were starting to spin around each other. And I tweeted it earlier on my Twitter account on Twitter. You can clearly see that you had one low-pressure system on the left, and you had one on the right. So it was very interesting to see how this one, the main one on the left, ended up spinning the right one all the way around it and actually creating some damage threat destructive severe thunderstorm warnings along the coastline. So very interesting stuff there that I saw from radar. And so the current radar loop as I am recording this is going to be above me. That's for the San Francisco and Oakland areas, the Bay Area in general. And we're going to get straight into our video. Please be sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe if you are new for all the latest weather information that I will be able to provide on the channel. So we'll talk about here what's going to be happening in the future, and we mentioned that Thursday was probably going to be a day to watch. Indeed, the National Weather Service and Storm Prediction Center agree, and you can see that there is already a risk here in place for the southern plains. We're talking a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale indicated in this yellow area here for southern Oklahoma and central Texas. Now this one, in my honest opinion, is more than likely going to be more of a hail and wind threat. I'm thinking more hail more than anything, especially along areas over here in the central portions of Texas. This is going to be a bit more of your classic dry line setup, but without as much wind shear. Your wind shear at the surface is pretty bad, and we'll get into that here in a second. But really interesting to note that we do have a threat for severe weather over there on Thursday, and then on Friday, you can see how this continues to expand over eastward, where we have a 15% chance of severe weather over here for eastern Texas. Now, I want to say here real quickly, this is going to go a bit further west. I have a feeling that this will start to recede further west more and more and more. And so I could very well be talking about areas in central Arkansas, eastern Texas, heading off into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and then of course the Ohio River, Mississippi River Delta areas over there. So just watch out, all right? I do think this risk is going to shift a little teeny bit, and I'll tell you guys why here a little bit later on in the video. But just note that there is a threat for severe weather there on Friday. That one's probably going to be a bit more of your tornado producers, so watch out for that as well. Nothing on the severe weather outlooks beyond that, but we are watching some other areas out beyond that as well, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But for right now, we'll get into the Euro model. We'll show you our jet stream and what that's looking at with the 500 millibar wind shear, which is about 6 kilometers above ground level. You can see at the bottom you have your scale, which tells you how strong the actual jet stream actually is. And you can see we got a pretty strong jet stream over the southwestern portions of California. I mean, the southwestern United States is getting battered by this what would be an atmospheric river if it weren't for the fact that we got this massive surface low pressure system that is currently situated off of the coast of California. And so this will continue to kind of be our general area to watch as this gets closer and closer towards the central portions of the United States. Now, if you watched my previous video, we talked about the positioning of the low pressure systems and high pressure systems and why that matters. And you can see here that we have that pesky high pressure system here that is over the Gulf of Mexico. Now, it's a lot further north than where you're going to see it here in the future. And that is going to be a main catalyst in regards to the intensity of our severe weather here, at least on Friday. But on Thursday, you can see that we're going to start to see some pretty strong wind shear that is going to move on through the central portions of the United States. And this high pressure system is going to aid with that flow. And what high pressure systems do is they spin clockwise, which means that the flow that is accompanied by that high pressure system is going to be pulled up on that western flank, and it is going to meet up with all that strong wind shear in the central portions of the United States. So as we continue from Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon, you are going to see that the wind shear is going to start to amplify. Right there, we're talking Friday morning now, and how the wind shear is going to start to be relatively significant. But if we backtrack to Thursday night when the event is actually supposed to do something, remember, our risk is supposed to be within this area right here, which means we don't exactly have the strongest amount of wind shear over the area at the moment, but the high pressure system is kind of blocking this low pressure system, meaning that this system's going to be moving relatively slowly overall off to the east. And so because of that high pressure system and its blocking, as well as the recent intensification from this low pressure system is going to develop, then we start to shift off towards Friday, and you can see the reason why Friday is expected to be as strong as it is. And look at that. We start to see a stronger low pressure system over here towards the central plains. We also have some very strong wind shear with even you can see these little dips in the jet stream right here out in front of that. That is actually the thunderstorms. All right, the radar is actually depicting that there are thunderstorms that can actually break the 500 millibar level, which is not terribly uncommon, but it's still something to note to say, wow, we're looking at this relatively far away from the event. It's not too far away to the point to where we're completely in the dark here, but this model has that much confidence in something happening that we have something that could potentially try to move on through this area across the board. So something to note there, but still very strong wind shear that's going to move on through. And then notice our high pressure system, what was over in the peninsula of Florida, is now starting to shift further towards the south and east. And now we have our new system that's going to move on through. So I mentioned that Sunday has the potential to have a little bit of severe weather. Well, there it is right there. So you see our low pressure system over here across the Rockies, but I'm not paying attention to that. That one is not where our severe weather could potentially be. It's right here. You see how we have a little bit of these kind of kinks in these little streamlines, these little black lines right here. This right here is where we could potentially be talking about the threat for some severe weather before the main low pressure system actually moves on through. So something to note there, on Sunday, we have the potential for severe weather, albeit not very high, not very strong chance of severe weather, but it is still, there's still a good chance that it could potentially try to move on through. But note as well, I mentioned the high pressure system here, big key contributor to the previous event. It is not there at all, nowhere to be seen across this general area, which means that there isn't really going to be as much of a dip in the jet stream with this one here. And so as we move on through into Monday, you can see our low pressure system tries to get something going over here, but we just don't have as big of a tilt in the jet stream as we did prior. And even a high pressure system over here towards the Yucatan Peninsula, this is not as far north as the previous event, which means that this one probably could be just a big wind or even hail threat that could move on through. I can't rule out the chance for tornadoes. We're too far away to really say. This is the beginning of next week after all, so we're going to have to continue to watch the models as this continues to develop. But as of right now, it just doesn't look like there isn't as much oomph behind this event as the one that could be potentially on Friday. So we'll watch through that. You can see that as this continues to move on through, we start to get an intensifying low that's in the northeast. Could we potentially have a shot of winter weather once again in the northeast sometime around, say, the 28th or the 29th? Who knows? We'll see. There is a good chance, there's a good possibility that we could have something here. But the big thing here to take away from this is that we're getting a lot of low pressure systems that are going to start to shoot on through the central portions of the United States over and over and over again from now all the way to the end of March, maybe even early April. So expect weather to be active. Now I'll give you guys a general idea as to our moisture return as this moves on through. So you see we got our first real shot of moisture here Wednesday, so the potential for maybe some spotty severe weather. Sleeper area, I'll tell you what, if a storm does form south of Kansas City near Ottawa, that general area, then could have some issues, but there's not really a whole lot of forcing, so I'm not too worried about that. If anything, I'll keep you guys updated tomorrow with a video, and I'll tell you guys what could potentially be happening if something does go for the worst over there. But in general, doesn't look too much like something could happen there on Wednesday. Thursday, you can see we got some pretty good moisture return across the area over there. And you can see a very expansive warm front that is extending from the Central Plains all the way over into the Northeast. So we'll move off to the high resolution models here. With the North American model, you can see a very stout dry line of moisture on the eastern side and very dry air on the western side. So the mixture of the two can create some very large storms that could even be hailers. However, the North American model doesn't really show as many storms within the area. I'll show you guys here in a bit. But the big thing here is that we do got storms that are going to be possible across that dry line, and then areas along the warm front here. An enhanced area of vorticity is definitely possible within that area, so something to watch out for. Convective available potential energy numbers, which is essentially the displacement between warm air rising and cold air sinking in the atmosphere. So the more displacement between the two, the more energy you have for thunderstorms to kind of form or sustain within that general vicinity. So just something to note, we do have a lot of energy present here on the dry line. So there's a plethora amount of energy here for storms to just kind of fire off. We do also have some energy over here on the warm front over here as well. So something to note within that. And you can see that as we take a look over here at our surface pressure here, you can see that we're starting to develop a little bit of a low pressure system over here in the northern Texas panhandle into the western portions of Oklahoma. And with that, you can kind of see how the pressure kind of elongates within certain areas as well. So the reason why this kind of jumps off to the east like this and makes a little bit of a kind of corner, if you were to kind of create a triangle there, you can see it's on the northern portion of the triangle. That is the warm front right there. So we got our warm front, and then we got our dry line back here as well. But if we kind of mix the two together, we can put up some form of vorticity to see, is there really anything possible here within these storms? Well, in the early hours, no, not really. In the afternoon, no, not really. Getting into the evening, maybe not really. Especially on the dry line. The dry line, there's not really a whole lot of vorticity there with our helicity from 0 to 1 kilometers. And this is we're talking strictly streamwise vorticity as well. We're not even accounting for crosswise vorticity, but streamwise vorticity is usually what favors tornadoes in this instance. So you can take a look and you can see only after nightfall is when helicity starts to go up, when your vorticity starts to go up. And by then, that's usually when a capping inversion starts to take place, and that's when storms start to kind of die out a little bit. So if we show you guys the reflectivity, you can see what I mean here as we get in towards Thursday morning and into Thursday afternoon. There's not really a whole lot of stuff here. I mean, there's your warm front right here that's still doing stuff, but it's not like there's any well-pronounced thunderstorms. But then as we get past that, you can see that late, like midnight, we're talking here, we got a storm or two that tries to form along the dry line there. So that's something interesting to note. Maybe some hailers within that, and then maybe some embedded hailers within that as well. Maybe some elevated hailers within the warm front there as well. But there is a little bit of vorticity. We'll see if it does anything. But for the most part, I would like to think that it is pretty elevated and that there wouldn't be as much of a tornado threat here on Thursday. We'll move off on to Friday here. We'll go to a less higher resolution model in the NAM 12 kilometer. And you can see on Friday, this is the reason why I think stuff will start to kind of recede a little bit further towards the west. And you can see that contrast to what the Euro thinks, which I will show you guys here what the Euro thinks. We'll move off onto Friday. And you can see at 21Z, which is late afternoon, we've got our cold front lagging back over here in eastern Texas. We've also got our warm front that extends all the way up into northern Arkansas as well as into portions of Kentucky. And you can see how far west it is compared to what our outlook said earlier. So I do think this is going to recede a little bit further west. I think areas over in I would say if you're in Arkansas, I would watch out. If you're in eastern Texas, I would watch out. If you're already in the risk here, I would still watch out, all right? Clarity is still coming in as we get closer and closer to Friday, and it's not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, so something to kind of watch out for as this continues to move on through. But regardless, very warm and moist dew points across the board. Upper 60s into maybe even lower 70s within some of the area. We do have some sufficient amount of CAPE values across the board within this area, so something to note within that. And I want you also to see our surface pressure here. We can see that we do have a nice little warm front that elongates through within that area, but notice that this low pressure system may be a little bit better defined than the previous one. And you can see that will indeed be the case as that goes through into the overnight hours to where we will have a strengthening low pressure system. So any storm that can really anchor to that general vicinity of where this low pressure system is starting to intensify could spell trouble for the potential for tornadoes. Now, one thing that I do want to mention here real quickly is that there might be a little teeny bit of an issue fundamentally with this event. This is usually what happens once you get into this portion of the United States. Geography seems to be based like this, so I guess we'll have to see how this works, and as this gets closer and closer towards the day in question, we'll see how the even higher resolution models deal with this. But what you guys are seeing right now is the simulated reflectivity, as you know, but I've added a little bit of a twist to it. So the darker blue areas here is where there is no cloud cover, and then the white areas is where there is cloud cover. And usually when you have cloud cover, that prevents the sun from heating the ground and making your temperatures warmer. Well, in this instance, we have a plethora of clouds here, right? Which means we have no sun, we have no way for the ground to heat, which means that ascent with whatever moisture, whatever heat goes up into the sky, when you have your warm air rising and your cold air sinking, it will not be as strong, which means that that could be a limiting factor with updrafts and a sustainment of mesocyclones. But we'll have to see as this moves on through. And so you can see we still have our cloud cover. As this gets in the afternoon, it does alleviate a little bit. So we could potentially see some more daytime heating, but it would be past the prime hours of the afternoon. It'll start to head into the evening when it actually starts to do stuff. But you can still see with the NAM, we still have a very strong signature of storms moving across the board in this area. If I'm in Arkansas, or if I'm in eastern Texas, or maybe even Louisiana, maybe even areas over into northeastern Arkansas and the surrounding areas over there in the boot heel of Missouri, maybe western Tennessee, I would probably watch out for this very closely as this moves on through. And of course, I'll have an updating video for you guys tomorrow talking more about this event. Now, I do want to show you guys what happens after this here real quickly. You can see how our low pressure system continues to move on through, and snow. Quite a bit of snow over here across the Midwest into the Great Lakes. So if you're over there in those areas, I'm talking Iowa, Wisconsin, northern Michigan, heading off into Ontario and Quebec, even the higher elevations of the Northeast, you guys could potentially get some extra activity. You can see here on Sunday into Monday, we have localized severe weather across the board over here in the Central Plains into the Deep South. So that's also something to note. As this heads off into Monday, you can see that we do have the potential for some severe weather over here on the southeast. And then as this gets over into Tuesday, you can see that we have another shot of severe weather in the southeast and then a potential storm. I'm not sure if I should call it a winter storm or just a regular storm that'll move on through, because with stuff like that that happens off in the northeast, I mean, we're pretty far away. Once again, it's the middle of next week that we're talking about. So we still got a lot of ways to go before we can actually classify what this thing actually is. But until then, probably could have some form of storm move on through in the middle of next week for areas of the Northeast. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family on social media. Also follow me on social media. Links will all be in the description down below. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask me on Twitter or on Discord. I usually respond quicker on Discord, so if you want to do that, please feel free to do so. Stay safe, everyone, and I will see you guys tomorrow. So peace out, everyone.